So I believe the microphones are on. We are open for any questions. Lam and Harry should be available also for more technical questions, and rest of the team.
So it doesn't even necessarily have to be questions around V3, right? It can be anything related to the Rack Power project or process, procedure, anything that's on your mind. So
yeah.
I have an important question.
Uh-huh.
You know what they're serving for lunch?
Sorry, that's a little bit outside my area of expertise. Yeah.
Okay, in that case. You know, a few OCPs ago, there was kind of a boundary that everyone talked about that sort of defined what you could do with both power and cooling, and I guess at the end of the day, you know, what you were going to put in the rack, and that was about 15 kilowatts, I think. And I know that we've kind of come a long way in terms of like liquid cooling and perhaps, you know, getting rid of some waste heat in other ways. Mm-hmm. What defines that boundary nowadays?
So for the current power shelf, right? So that's also going to have a limit around 15 kilowatts. I think we're actually at, what, 13 and a half for IT gear, and then there's another 1,500 watts available for the battery backup when it's charging up. So that's stated fairly similar, at least on the power shelf that's being defined right now with this particular specification. But we have added the ability to put 2 power shelves now into racks, so you can able to double those up. And again, as we saw, it kind of depends on how you design the bus bar and where you put the power shelves into the rack as to how much total power you can get out of that. But you should be able to get over 30 kilowatts with that. Potentially a little bit higher than that. And that's just based on these particular power shelves, right? The community is, of course, free to go off and develop a different power shelf that plugs into the bus bars that's capable of some other amount.
And there's no other thermal limit. I appreciate that you can double up the power shelf.
Sure.
That
Absolutely. So that's, again, kind of dependent on the IT gear and, you know, how cold the air is that's coming into your particular rack. So obviously, when you start getting up over, you know, 20, 25 kilowatts, it starts to get a little more difficult to dissipate all that heat using air, which is why you see a lot of the work around adding the additional liquid cooling capabilities into OpenRack V3. So we haven't been able to go into a whole lot of detail in this particular forum on the liquid cooling capabilities that are going to OpenRack V3. That's actually going on in the cooling track next door, where they're going through the blind mate interface manifolds. So you'll have 2 manifolds in the back of the rack, one hot and one cold, and you can plug the IT gear directly into the manifolds, just like we do on the bus bar. It's the IT gear will plug right back into that. So there's a lot of work that's getting done in that community to build the blind mate valves for the manifold as well as on the IT gear side. So there's certainly a lot of capabilities getting added into the rack to help with those higher power densities as we go forward. And you know, I'm sure there's demand for more than the 30 kilowatts that we're showing today. And like Hamid, you had mentioned earlier, that you know, the community will probably start looking at some more bigger power shelves in the future. But we just don't have any of those on the roadmap right this second. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Hamid?
No, that was pretty good. Yeah, I think that the current version is more for the general compute with like 15 kilowatt. You can add the second shelf to go to around 30 plus kilowatt. I mean, the design is as such that you can add more if you want, just more cables to manage and like more space on the rack. We will look later on, hopefully in near future, for higher density power systems to address like plus 50 kilowatt rack power solutions.
Nothing else?
I can ask you a question, Steve.
Okay.
Question I ask very frequently. Where is the when the step specs would be final, and when the customers would be able to like place order on the mass production units?
Sure. Yep. I get that question quite a bit too. So on the spec side, right, we're going through a revision right now based on the prototypes that the community's received. So we're updating the specifications right now. So hopefully all of them would be available sometime in the spring based on the updates that we're seeing right now. And then hopefully we'll have more of a final review or a final specification we sent for review to the incubation committee maybe in the fall of next year. In the meantime, we'd have updates to those specifications as we go available on the OCP wiki. We are working on some additional documentation to kind of help support the community. That's currently not available at all. We are just kicking off a design guide for IT designers and builders. So if you're looking to build, whether it's a server or storage or whatever it is, we'll have a design guide to kind of help you go through both the mechanical and power features that you're going to need in order to be compliant with the rack systems. And then we'll also be doing more of the system level specification as well to kind of define some of the power requirements as well. So there's some new documentation that we're just starting to kick off now, so we won't see those until next year. In terms of production, right, so you'd certainly have to talk to the individual suppliers to see what their schedules are, because they're going to be different depending upon who you talk to, right, whether it's the rack frame or the power shelf BBU or connectors. So if you're wanting to know more about that, we've got all the right people here, so I can certainly connect you with whoever you want to talk to find out what their schedules are for going into productions and when prototypes might be available or anything like that.
Just to add, the latest specs are available on the wiki, so everyone is free to download the latest version. We just keep holding design reviews, getting feedbacks on other, and keep updating the specs as we move forward. So feel free to bring your feedback, questions, thoughts to the mailing list or to the monthly calls that we have, and those are helping us to enhance the spec. Is there a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Steve, another question.
Microphone is off, I believe.
Can you hear me? No. Okay, so I guess
Push the button, I believe.
I don't think that's it. Yeah. There you go.
Okay, perfect. I know we talked about this, Hamid, but we are seeing a lot of interest on ORv3 system, which is outside the OCP community, people who are not members yet, and it's more about the controller spec. I know we started working on the controller spec, Modbus, and the question is, in order for us not to duplicate the effort, when do you think we can release the Modbus spec so at least we can leverage that to create a unified solution for our customers, so we don't have to have an intermediate step like you saw from Delta and others and us, so we can have one solution, same controller. We are good on PSU and BBU, but just to complete the picture. Mm-hmm. So.
I believe the specific Modbus spec is complete, which is through PMI. I believe you're asking about the PMC, the communication through Ethernet.
Correct.
So that one through Modbus, the specs are complete, the register maps and all the details are out. There has been the communication piece overall is the piece that you will find different customers. They do different ways, and like. Someone likes the PM bus, some likes a Modbus, someone likes the Ethernet. So that was the piece that we saw that we cannot enforce one solution for everybody, and that was the reason that we have that module, that communication piece as a modular. So you can move it out and put another one with any other type of communication that you like. The one that we were we discussed with different communities, and like the customers that they were immediately at the need was the Modbus. That was the one we developed the PMI version. So there is a spec around that, and people can purchase and use that. The other version of the other versions of the communication, as such as PM bus or Ethernet or other things, we have not developed any spec. There hasn't been any customer or end user that has the interest yet on those. I've seen some, there are different suppliers that are doing this, but I haven't seen a customer driving those requirements. So we are waiting for that. This is open, and this is perfect for OCP. Like even someone may like the CAN bus. Just move that board, and we have like the connector with all the signals available, the connectors available, put other electronics, and and just ship it. So there is no need for redesign the whole thing, just that module. We don't just as of now, the only customers that we saw, it was the Modbus, and every other end user is welcome to derive a requirement for another module and contribute it to OCP. It just we didn't see the interest, and since like at Meta we don't have the use case as such, we didn't also derive the spec. But it's again, everybody is welcome, others end user to derive the spec for that.
That's a great explanation. I was just referring primarily to Modbus. As you say, everybody's interested in Modbus,
Yeah.
right? So we will have that released soon, so we can share that.
Yeah, I think I may not publish it on the wiki. Oh yeah,
That's
we
my-
have it available. Yeah, okay. I will make sure that I publish it on the wiki.
Thank
as well.
you.
But those are available. I believe I shared with the.
You have shared with us,
with
but
us,
it's not in
but
public
not as-
domain. It's not in
Yeah,
public domain.
good point. Yeah, I will share it to the wiki as well.
Thank
Sure.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sam from Lighton. Yeah, got a question. So there are certain architecture they use ATS to be part of the power supply or rack or total shelf solution. So will this be in not in the scope at all? Is it leave it to upstream the data center? What's your comment about ATS integration?
The ATS, for share to everybody, this is the automatic transfer switch that, if you have two inputs, you can switch from one input to the other one. The current scope doesn't have that one. There was not as much requirement from people talking to us. I know some people, not member of some customers or end users, not even showing up at OCP, they are interested on those solutions. It just there was no end user and customer that driving this. The range of the companies that we work with, they didn't need that ATS. But certainly, if there is an end customer, if there is a use case, we can add it to the feature, maybe another version. It cannot work both ways. Like we cannot have a PowerShell with and have both with and work with and without ATS. Should be another version. It's open for any supplier or end customers to drive that and add it to OpenRack. I think this is a great add to this to the range of the products.
Yeah, it does sound like a good opportunity at some point if somebody wants to take the reins and drive that.
One question that I got, Steve, is that how can a company become a supplier of OpenRack v3? Any piece of that, the connector, the power shelf, and rack. I saw some folks coming from Turkey, and they said they want to be some point be a supplier. How can I do that? Number one, is there a requirement? And number two, is there any regulatory and compliance that the test they like qualify the product against the spec, and like is there anything such a thing in OCP?
Okay, yeah, so that's a good question. So from a process standpoint, OCP isn't a certification organization, right? So we generate specification, and then we allow the individual companies to certify against that against that specification. So normally the way this works is after a company generates a specification and gets approved by the incubation committee and becomes an official specification, the next step is design files, and then once those are available, the final step is kind of a product, right? So you can offer your product to OCP, and the process for that is, you would go through and do your certifications against the open specification, and then you would generate a contribution to OCP of your product. And part of that contribution would be all your test results and the like. There's a a small presentation that you do that kind of does a quick overview of what the product is and why you're doing it, and your test data, and that gets submitted into the incubation committee where we review all that and then approve it. And then once it's approved, then you can use kind of the OCP badging on your product. The next step is if you want to actually get your product on the marketplace, like the OCP marketplace, you're welcome to do that. That's an additional kind of level on top of that. In terms of there's different some additional paperwork and stuff that you have to get approved, but then you're allowed to show your product on the OCP marketplace. So it just kind of depends on your goals. Once you're on there, then it's just a matter of finding those end users, right, that are actually using that product. And OCP has some individuals. Steve Helvey is a member of the foundation, and one of his goals is to connect different people within the community, both suppliers and contributors and end users. So he's a very good resource for trying to find someone that might be interested in your product, and then kind of going from there. So that's kind of where OCP can help kind of build that bridge from outside the community to inside the community.
Thank you. We have a couple of more minutes. There is another question from Damir. Sorry, just quickly go through that. Why is rectifier module power limited to 3 kilowatt in V3 spec? Can it be higher? Is there input connector current limiting factor? I believe this is around that previous discussion that we had around why the power actually is 15 kilowatt. Can it go higher? Definitely it can go higher. And we have it on our plan in near future to build more, which actually starts from increasing the rectifier power more than 3 kilowatt. I think once we get there, the input connector also needs to be upgraded. Currently, it is actually for like around the 15 kilowatt, 18 kilowatt, so that also needs to be upgraded. There is nothing limiting us. It's just a matter of the interest from the community to go to the next higher and higher power. Yeah, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, so the down conversion from 48 to the core voltage and all, do you think that's would be in the scope of OCP to define? Because we see a lot of things like 48 to 12, some 46, various companies working on that in various ideas. So will there be some kind of standardization as to how to move from 48 to the lower voltages?
So right now we don't have any plans to go do that. That doesn't necessarily mean that it wouldn't be something that we would do. We would have to figure out where that standardization would add value. So once I could definitely see maybe some standardized like 48 to 12, like PDBs or something like that, but to have like standardized components going from 48 to point of load, I don't know where additional standardization would help it in that. Maybe that's something that I'm aware of. But if there is, then that might be a good area. But right now we don't have any plans to do that.
Just add to that, there's a lot of recommendations, and I believe there was a presentation before, like last summit, and other companies. It just not one size fit all. It is like it depends on the cost and application. You may want to use different type of 48 volt to 12 volt to the core voltage. It's a lot of varieties. We cannot standard that, and it's just for end user can use it, can pick one of the solution based on the use case.
Maybe if I can just follow up to that. Just a follow-up to that would be, so 48 and 51 seems to be more of the standard driven here and not going to be this 40 to 60 that was in discussion for quite some time.
Yeah, we are focusing on the narrow range 48 volts concept, not the wide range 48 volt, which was on OpenRAC V2.
So we can hang out here and keep talking for a little while. That's perfectly fine. It's break time now, so if you guys want to take a break, go do that. And I think we start back up here at 10 o'clock. But as long as we have questions, we'll continue to hang out here for a little bit longer. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Thanks. So I'm sure you can answer this specifically very easily, and it's obvious from version 2 to version 3, a lot of advantages, a lot of enhancements as far as capabilities. What was that time span, and do you have a prediction that version 3.5 might come about, or version 4? Is there anything that you know along those lines? I see you smiling. I mean, maybe that's a difficult question to answer, I'm sure.
Good question for Steve. He has been
Yeah.
from version 1 here, yeah?
So right now, no, we don't have anything that we know about, right, that would force us to go to another rack architecture just yet. So there's nothing on the roadmap related to like 3.5 or 4. Once there's something that we see on the time horizon, then we can certainly talk about what that might be.
And so obviously it's been 10 years from one.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be a while off. So we'll just have to see how it goes.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, sure.
I think we try to do all of that to accommodate any new design and modularity in the solution and the rack and the power. So this architecture will stick for here for a while. I believe what the feedback that I keep hearing, like even today, is can we go higher and higher? We can definitely do that in V3. We don't need to go to a new architecture. Yeah.
Yep, there's definitely a lot of flexibility in the design of the bus bar to incorporate more power. So hopefully that'll give the community enough flexibility to provide some legs for 3 to last quite a while.
Just a quick question. Any thoughts on different sizes of racks? I know main customers are probably standardized on one size, but any thoughts, or would that go toward the telco perhaps?
Yeah. So the base specification for the mechanical portion of it doesn't really define a maximum height or a minimum height, or even like a width or depth. So there will be a Meta-specific specification that defines exactly what Meta will use. That people are free to use that particular instantiation of it as they like, or they can make something bigger or taller. Kind of like on V2, it will define the critical dimensions between the bus bar and the latching connectors and that kind of thing. But you're free to grow the depth of it as you like. So at least that's the plan right now. So if you want to work on something that's taller or shorter, that you can certainly build whatever you need around that. There are some other, like in the telco project and in TIP, right? They've got some different architectures that they're working on that are a little smaller, more edge related. So hopefully one of those, if OpenRAC V3 isn't the right one for your particular needs, but hopefully one of those smaller telco specifications that OCP is endorsing would work for you.
Maybe we take it as a last question. online. How do we better provide features in front of the racks to allow for big storage boxes to be served, similar to what we have today on 19-inch frames? The simple current front tabs will not do that work. How do we better provide features in front of the racks to allow for big storage boxes to be serviced?
Okay. So I'm not sure how much bigger a storage box they're referring to. So there's definitely some out on the floor that are pretty good size. And the way those are serviced is by extracting the entire chassis out and then doing a top load for the drives. So we are adding some features into the open rack architecture, kind of help with shock and vibe standpoint. So there are features on the back as the chassis goes into the rack. There's some backstops and there's some constraints that are part of the architecture to constrain the rear of the rack during transport. And we're also adding some features that grab the front of the rack as well. So when it's fully seated all the way in, it'll grab around the front of the chassis and keep it from vibrating during transportation. So that's kind of a new feature for V3. But in terms of...
It says for you, most likely around 250 pounds on the slides.
Okay. So that sounds fairly... So for you is pretty similar, I think, to what there is at on the floor right now. So it's just a matter of securing those rails into the rack frame. So if you want to use the standard L brackets, Open Rack V3 can also support some additional bracketry, right? So you could directly bolt those, like adapters or your slides directly into the rack frame itself, and not use the L bracket. If you were to choose to go that route as well, if that might make it a little more secure, if you're concerned about that. But there are examples of using an Open Rack V2, and we're planning on reusing those same features for heavy storage equipment as well. So, okay, I think that's good.
Yeah, we are done with this. We close this one. Please reach to us offline. We would be around for any questions. I believe the next presentation starts in 1 minute.
Yeah. Thanks.